Hang in there. It's our United Souls course. We are discussing very important focuses on the listening aspect. And then once we've mastered the listening, at least in a practical, explained way, then we're going to go, please God, to synergizing. Very important developments of hearing the soul level and bringing it out in practical ways. Thank you again for joining us today. And we're going to be going live shortly. Just hang in there while we just get ready. Yes, just give us. We are live. Thank God. Okay, together we're joining PulveREDU, PulveREDU, however you want to say it. We are together learning and going ahead in a beautiful course, United Souls for a divided or divisive generation. And as you know, I'm Eli Goldsmith, and thank God we are already well on the way in our course, and excited to be here with our wonderful friend Jonathan, and hopefully with time it will grow. But the most important thing is that we're doing this and we're not compromising the course. Thank God that even our host is able to make it happen while she's on the way, and we appreciate that very much. That's a very important trait, as we mentioned, being proactive, or being versatile, and for our generation having the emotional intelligence to make the transitions that you need to make without getting overly controlling about it or needing a certain flow, but allowing us to go with the flow that's in front of us and not forcing the reality, but rather letting go and going with the reality. And that gives us much more energy and power. And the sooner we let go, the sooner we're in a position to be able to experience the divine flow that's available in every moment and gift of life. And that's part of this soul focus that we're trying to build here, because the soul understands these ideas. The soul is aware of the truth of creation on a constant basis. And it's just a matter of us bringing it down to practical daily living, into our mind, into our heart, into our daily experience with the people we love and the people we're with. That's going to be the challenge that we have in this course, because the soul already knows. We're not worried about the soul. We're worried about us as how we identify ourselves as human beings with a physical reality and an emotional reality. And hopefully, too, for many people nowadays, it needs an extra special prayer, but a spiritual reality as well. That we have to be aware of all the levels of humanity and not ignore any of them. They're all relevant and they're all necessary, and balance is a very important part of this soulful experience. The balance gives us equilibrium to be able to process things in a healthy way and to continue on our journey. And sometimes when we're experiencing extremes, which I don't know what your week's been like, but mine has had some extreme moments. So those moments are giving us the opportunity to then balance out again, and once again going back into the flow that's around it. So it's an interesting paradox, because there is a certain amount of letting go and there is a certain amount of being proactive and making choices, and those two seemingly contradictory realities are actually one. And that's a very deep truth in the mystical books, the idea that something is created from nothing, and yet that nothing is the something. A very deep concept, something we can think about in our spare time and meditate on. But to not get distracted now in our course, we have to bring that paradox into our reality. And it's an amazing thing that you'd be surprised how much we live in the realm of paradox, that we're often not in a state where we are truly or seemingly balanced, and yet we're able to still function and go forward, and we're able to ride those waves, those struggles, those challenges. And we were hoping that the Corona challenge is at its end, but it seems to still be raising its head, and it still seems to be a reality. The crown or the Corona is still there, and we're going to have to keep going ahead and finding new ways to deal with whatever challenges come up. And that is once again the first point of being proactive and being soulful. We went over the concept of mission statement, having goals, values, and dreams, and then we put into reality, and this is all on the private level, of being able to put it into being effective and focused in our time. So we have time management, we have goals and priorities, what to put as our first things first, not to get distracted by life. And that in itself is a massive achievement in our generation. Just these 3 points of being proactive, having a mission, and being effective with our time. If we can get those 3 things done in a successful way, then we're moving from the personal and private victory to the public victory, as Stephen Covey so cleverly wrote. And then we can go from being independent to interdependent. We can start joining with the larger whole. And that is the key for us to now go into this next part of the course, which we already started last week, of the public victory of win-win. And win-win is, once again, as we mentioned last time, the idea of joining together with the other person, not just being caught up with your own agendas or your own needs, but to always be there to empower other people and to help them also succeed. That it shouldn't be an organization that's run or a family that functions based on, how can I come out the best? How can I come out right? How can I be the winner? It's about the true winner is someone who's empowering others to win. Like everyone knows with team relationships are about the whole team winning, not just the individual shining. The guy who wants to grab all the goals is actually weakening the team. So really it's about thinking about the other people around us. So that's one very important part of this course. It has to be interactive, and Jonathan is the one who's blessed this week to have that full interaction together, because then we can win-win, because then I know a little bit more who I'm talking to and what your goals and your dreams and your mission statement is, and together we can collaborate and build hopefully some steps forward. And that was one of the encouraging points from last week's class that we got when we went to the 5th point of the course of listening to our own soul and then being able to listen to other souls, learning the voice of the soul, learning the voice of other people's souls, learning to really listen to other people. That last week's course point is something which we just touched on because it's so challenging. To me, it's actually the hardest point in this course in my life. I don't know if everyone agrees with that. I know that Stephen Covey, who came up with the idea of seek to understand before being understood, that was his way of phrasing it. That concept, he said, is the hardest part of his habits, 7 habits. But I know from the soulful level, which is what we're focusing on, the soul level, not just on the intellectual understanding, but there's a soulful experience of listening, that we discussed something that was very profound, and it helped, hopefully, Jonathan, create the basis of a TED Talk, because the idea of listening can really explain to other people in a profound way what someone else is going through. So your example last week of bringing up the police officers, what they go through on a weekly or even daily level on being on service, and having to go through so much trauma and pain on a daily level and a public experience of what they have to do as a police officer. And with the toolbox they have being limited, because they haven't been trained in with all the different people skills, and they don't know exactly every peaceful way of resolving situations, and they don't have necessarily the backing therapeutic wise or psychologically wise or even financially wise to be able to know how to what to do, and have the peace of mind, the emotional bank account, to be able to now invest themselves in this situation correctly. And therefore they're in a constant state of trauma. And the clever point you brought out was that they're constantly putting another clothing on from trauma to trauma, and more baggage, and it gets heavier and heavier. And we mentioned the story of the holy rabbi who was able to help so many people in such a profound way, because he was able to each person and each encounter to be fully present. We should talk about being mindfulness and being fully available for the now that's available right here, to be here right now. No, there's nothing else in the world other than this moment. And therefore to listen to the person, the soul that's in front of me, to truly listen, engage that person. And as a police officer, the ideal would be to be able to experience each encounter like that, and have the tools to be able to take off the trauma and the pain of each of those encounters as they go through. So you're not constantly building on the baggage and the clothing until you're this giant fat, blob of clothing and trauma and pain. Rather, you're like, the blob from that horror movie. And if you remember that, and you're just absorbing everyone's pain. You don't want to be like that.
I hated that movie. Yeah. That was the scariest movie ever.
It's seeping through my door right now. But the good news is it isn't. So I was just joking. But the point is that, thank God, it's just a movie. But we do it to ourselves on a certain level. I think every movie, if you have the wisdom to be able to step back and say this was a creation of a human being or a friend or a person, and they're just manifesting what their inner world, their inner creative realm has experienced. And it might come out in all kinds of imaginative ways. But the point is, underneath, there's key psychological motivators why they're creating a film to give over this message. I mean, hopefully it's not what's happened to the movie business right now, where it's gone completely agenda-ridden almost. And it's unfortunately the quality of the movies is very low because of that. But if you go back to a more old school movie, like I wouldn't say The Blob, but the more recent ones, you'd be able to say that the quality of the filming and the focus on the human experience of the people involved in the movie is tremendously important and profound. And a person can learn if he steps back from the action and the drama and the music that's going on, created by the movie, but you actually start to think a little bit as your own thinking mind and don't just get absorbed into the entertainment. You start to step back. Now, how is this connecting to me? This is an example, like we can constantly do this in all kinds of scenarios, not just with movies, but learn how to sometimes step out of this situation, even though we have to be present, but learn how to sort of look from a higher perspective. And that's why the soul level is so important. I remember when, sorry to bring it up, but when I used to do drugs back in the day when I was a teenager, I don't know if any of you guys had that experience, but I had that experience. And I remember one of the profound moments for me was when I stepped out myself a little bit more and started to look at the media world that I was engaging with. And I was like, wow, like this is so fake. For example, Friends. I was watching Friends. It was in the 90s. And it just suddenly, all the illusion, everything that I was watching there suddenly fell apart to just be so silly and time consuming and just nonsensical and just profoundly fake, like on the deepest level of fake. That was my experience, thank God. Thank God it was a positive experience with the drugs at that age. I wouldn't recommend it now, and I haven't touched it since, I was a teenager pretty much. But the point is that moment gave me an understanding that we can create that perspective without the drugs. We can create that higher level viewpoint of our life through objectivity and through having profound conversations with people that we love, by connecting to the soul level, by speaking to people that are also more objective. There's an ability to step out of our situation and view life on a higher level. And I think that meditation and prayer, all these different tools can give us that ability. Now, how is this relevant to today's point? Is because in order to listen to the soul, we're going to have to get more in touch with ourselves. And that means, therefore, reducing a lot of the sound, the noise, and the distractions around us, which hopefully we were doing anyway in the third point when we were being more effective with our time. But we're also going to now be more soulful in how we understand our ability to experience life. And listening and loving oneself and experiencing life are all one concept, in my opinion, on this point. Because to be able to love oneself, to be able to have space in yourself, that you understand that you're a special person and you have a mission and you appreciate your good qualities, you're aware of your faults, and you're able to therefore now, when you're with another person, diverse yourself, be able to diverge yourself from your own clothing and be with that other person with their clothing. And I think that's a really important point that I know myself, like I'm all the time trying to work on this, because I know that with my relationships that I need to become better at that. And it really will make a profound difference with my family and my friends and everything I'm trying to do. So there's no point me avoiding it or delaying. It's actually really urgent. It's not something which I can say, when I'm older, when my life, when I've reached a certain point of financial well-being, so that's my priority rather than this, or when I've reached a certain clarity of thought, or when all different excuses why to delay it. When the world has better technology, like go to Joe Rogan's podcast and he's talking about with Elon Musk Neuralinks, and when I can start to think other people's thoughts, then I'll really listen. Because speaking is such a limited way of communication. Okay, these are ideas, that maybe one day will be in reality. But right now, in this moment, you're given this person in front of you. There's going to be no other opportunity. I sometimes I don't cry about it, but I feel it in a deep way. When my kids are around me and I'm thinking, wow, right now I have this opportunity. I'm with my child. Can I engage with them? Like fully present? Am I engaging with them, like who they really are? And am I engaging with my full self? Or am I completely distracted? Or even worse, I have agendas with them. I have my own narratives, my own scripts that I want to put onto them. And I'm missing that moment of life. I'm missing that opportunity. Like as people say, after, you've lived in this world, and in the Jewish world, we say after 120, you've had your full life and you're having... We mentioned it last time. People are not going to be worried about how much money and how much honor and prestige. They're going to be worried about their relationships. That's what they're going to be thinking about. They're going to be thinking about, did I really fulfill my purpose in this world? Did I really manifest love towards the people who are my legacy? Have I continued on that legacy? These are the kind of things that people are going to think about in their eulogy that's going to be told. These are kind of focus that I had. And I know myself, like right now, I would say I'm feeling the opposite of that on an honest level. Like I have, thank God, good moments. Right now, I would say, being honest to you, Jonathan, and whoever else would be listening, please God, I have the reality that I'm not feeling that right now. Right now, I just, that this is a very normal feeling nowadays. I want to escape. Like Gedalia Fenster, one of my friends and very talented speakers and a guy worth checking out. He says that, you'd rather stuff your face than face your stuff. That's a good line. Yeah. I'd rather stuff my face than face my stuff. That's a great line. Or there's so many lines he has like that. He has hundreds of these lines. He once told me he's going to simplify all these deep ideas that he uses in his rehabs and all his different thousands of classes he teaches over the years. He's going to simplify them into one-liners. And this is one of them. So facing your stuff is much more important. And we have the inclination, and I'm having it right now, to not face my stuff. I'm being transparent with you, to not want to have to face my child and their challenges. I'd much rather just, have an easier time with my spouse, who's a bit more mature and more in touch with herself. Go do something fun, have a holiday. The summer days are coming up. I want to avoid those challenges. I don't want to face it. And then they're asking me. And part of me wants to be like, just control them. Just do what I ask. Easy way out. I'm not listening to them. I want to put my agenda onto them. And this can happen, I suppose, in the police force as well, with even the higher-ups. The higher-ups, I have it in my own work as well. The higher-up wants to bring the money. Or the police person, bring the success on the streets. Bring the great cases. Solve the cases. Don't bring me all the headaches. But that's not the truth. The headaches are the key to the success. Yeah, facing your stuff is the key to your relationships. Being able to work out relationships with your boss and with the people they're wanting you to interact with in a real way, in a engaged way, in a fully engaged way, is going to be the key. If you're like a non-profit, for example, to bring the charitable donations and the sponsorship and the partnership. It's not going to happen from just sticking a hand out and saying, give me money, or police officer sticking out his truncheon. I don't know what they call it in America. I'm sure there's a name for it. Police stick. Maybe you'll tell me, Jonathan, but whatever it is, you're hitting the other person with, or worse, guns or tasers, or all the different tools that are used to get what you want done short term. but that's not going to create long-term a relationship with the community you're in. You're going to have to work out a better way to resolve difficult situations than just the first instinct of forcing people to do what you want. Forcing people to do what you want has never worked. It won't work politically, it won't work economically, it won't work relationship-wise. So therefore, having an understanding of the soul and knowing that you have a soul and knowing that you need to listen, you need to be engaged, suddenly creates a whole different paradigm. You are now overcoming your initial reaction as a human being who wants to escape and just wants control, so you can therefore escape. Meaning like you control that person so they're no longer going to take up your time. See, the whole beauty of that story we told last week was that the rabbi was totally there for those other people. For those meetings, there was nothing else in the world. Even his own family, nobody existed. As much as he loves other people around him, but that moment, they call it a unification of souls between two people. It's a very deep idea, but we should have that in marriage. That's really what marriage is about. They don't talk about it in, when you're getting married under the wedding canopy. They have these vows and things, but the real concept of marriage is unification, is a uniting of souls, which is really what marriage. The idea of an engagement with a student or a family member is an opportunity for unification. Now, what some very revolutionary rabbis did in the 17th, 18th century was introduced to even the Jewish world, because they've forgotten about this concept, reintroduced and brought it alive again for the world, because it's something which is now somewhat public, maybe not totally, but the idea that every person you can have a unification with. It's a very deep idea, and it was a very profound teaching. The name of the rabbi was the Baal Shem Tov HaKodesh. Yeah, it was a holy person, Rav Yisrael Baal Shem. He brought down this concept that the unification needs to take place with every single human being you engage with, every single soul that you're blessed to experience. Now, once again, I'm coming back to myself. I believe that's the true teaching for the world right now that will get rid of this divisiveness, to understand the united soul level, to understand unification. This is what this course in essence is about, and what it, in essence, can change the whole world. But I have to also be realistic and practical. I can have this beautiful teaching and this beautiful ideal, but I have to now start practicing it with what's in front of me. And that's where the challenge begins. How do I bring this beautiful concept that I now know about? I definitely need to learn more about it, because it's a very deep concept and it needs a bit more explanation than just the words. We need to bring it out a bit more and more until we really understand it. But then the key will be to bring it into practicality, into all the situations we mentioned before, into our job situation, into our everyday meetings with people, into our family situation. That would, in my opinion, be the first place to really put your effort into it the most. Family first is the key, because I think that the ones closest to you are the ones that are the most challenging and the ones that reveal the most about you, that need work, especially your soulmate. As Gedalia once said, for men, he says this to men: don't go look for a trophy wife, rather look for a wife that brings you trophies. Yeah, that you become a winner from it. That you don't need to go show off this person, but this person who believes in you and builds you into a winner. That's the win-win aspect of the souls. It's another great quote from him. So the idea is that that's the kind of relationships that we have to first build at home. And, it would work the other way as well, obviously with women or whatever you call yourself gender-wise nowadays. The point is that you build relationships of soul, and that would obviously resolve a lot of the racial tension that's going on, and will resolve a lot of the political tension and also financial tension, because every soul in this world is going to get what's coming to it in a positive sense, not in a negative sense. People that use that phrase as a negative thing. I'm using it as positive karma or a divine flow abundance that's coming down. Everyone's going to get their income. There's no reason to fight with other people for your income. It's a mistake. It's the competition is with yourself, not with others. Yeah. Now, we're all human. We're going to see those statistics. Like, I'm sure the police force has its way of, I don't remember the word, but I remember when I was in corporate, they have KIs. What's it called? There was some word they used to analyze everything in the company. KBI, something like that. And they go through your, all your figures of sales and positive feedback and, all the, whatever job it is, whatever your accomplishments, and KPI, that's it. And you get the KPI numbers and you evaluate, like everyone's being evaluated on some level, like your credit score or, everyone has certain, evaluation sticks. But when you get to the soul level, it's a different kind of evaluation. It's evaluation of, as we just said, competition with yourself rather than others. How much have I improved? How much have I learned to empower others, not beat them? Or how much of a leader have I become for others? It's rather a self-engaging evaluation. And it's as they say, you have one eye. The Holy Rabbi of Simcha Bunim said this. You have the right eye to see the good in everyone else. What's the point of the left eye? To now analyze yourself. You never use the left eye, which represents more the side of judgment. Use it for others. Use it for yourself. That's all it's for. And that's why you were given two eyes. One to see the good in others and the others to evaluate yourself. And it's a different kind of life now, because imagine, take those concepts. You want to unify with people. You want to see the good in people. You want to empower other people. And all the aspects of judgment and criticism you only use for your own self-development, pretty much. Here and there, there'll be a moment where it's needed, because you can't be, as we say in Yiddish, be a schmatter. You can't be, a piece of cloth that everyone just stands on. Yeah, doormat. I think that would be the general universal terminology. You don't want to be a doormat. Yeah, I don't believe in turning the other cheek. It's not my religion, but I don't believe in it anyway. I don't think that's correct. Yeah, if someone's hitting me, I'm going to defend myself. Yeah, but the point is that obviously everything with boundaries and balance. But the reality of being able to now have those concepts in your mind, learning about these ideas, and now once again the value system is clear, and now how you interact with people is on a whole different level. Now your public experience is on a whole different level. As I said, I wasn't feeling like this before I started the course. But one of the good things is, very important to know this, and take this with you. And Gedalia actually brought it up again himself today as well in his latest class. I just was listening to it, I think this morning or yesterday. The idea of life is renewal. That life is not being stuck in old stories. As we mentioned before, you're constantly being created. Reality is constantly coming down, a new reality. If you're living with that kind of fresh, vitalized energy, then whatever limitations that were going on before don't have to exist now, because you're a new reality now that never was. And you're experiencing life with a whole fresh level. So now you can engage in whatever is in front of you with a renewed outlook. And you don't have to continue with that feeling. I had that feeling before. But if I would live up to my own ideas and my own teachings, then I'm starting fresh now that I'm in the course. And whatever I failed at before can be fixed. That's one of the optimistic views. Say you have a marriage that fell apart. Well, thank God there's other opportunities. One, to find a new soulmate, and to learn everything from the failed marriage that went wrong, and now to be even more proactive, not reactive, proactive with the new relationship. And you have new tools you never did. And you can even forgive the previous person and move on completely from the stories and the limitations that were created there. This is the kind of life a person can live. And then you, as we mentioned with the idea of the TED Talk, with all the clothings, you're not walking through life with all your own baggages. You're not still stuck on the previous marriage. You're not still stuck on the previous job. You're not stuck in the previous hour even. That's how good you can get. If you practice this teaching, it can even come to the moment. Yeah, we're talking about life experiences, which is generally how people look at life. But if you understand how intense and true life really is, and how fulfilling it is, that every single moment you can renew yourself afresh. And therefore, you're living moment to moment in the truest sense. So now, when we go to the concept of listening to another person, and I'll just read out some of the points, and then we'll have a little break. The order is very significant. The amazing level of loving others first comes with loving oneself. And oneself is one's soul. We have to value ourselves, and the whole world is created for me. We mentioned this last time. Know our triggers. Very good. My wife, my soulmate, put this in this point. Know our triggers and personal boundaries. So you turn up to our loved ones, recharge somewhat. You hear that? That's brilliant. My wife's much more realistic than I am. She knows I have triggers. She knows that my children have triggers. She knows that people around me have triggers. So she's learned how to be sensitive to triggers, to not try and trigger other people, not to stimulate those triggers. And she knows when she's been triggered or she's about to be triggered, and she prepares for it. So a lot of self-awareness going on here. And I learned that a lot from my wife, because I'm generally a bit more, I don't know, just clueless with this kind of stuff. Like this emotion, a lot of self-awareness, emotional awareness. And thank God I have a soulmate who balances me in that way and teaches me this kind of stuff. This will help us focus and listen better, as we won't be so blocked or distracted. Ideally, every moment of focus with loved ones is a huge opportunity of connection. Really listen. Not just with your own scripting. Listen to your own soul, and that would teach you how to listen to others. That's pretty much the main points of today's class. I would like to go to the 6th point, but before we do, we have to discuss this, because it is hugely challenging, definitely for me, and I assume for Jonathan, and I assume for most people. So what do you say, Jonathan?
Yeah, no, I agree. When responding versus reacting is something that really helped me with this, and it was taught by texting, right? Like you get a text message, especially if it's, in a heated situation, or we think that we have to respond to everything, right away. But what we're actually doing is we're just reacting. And if we were responding, we're taking the time to think it through and then respond, right? So the difference between, your kids acting out and you reacting to their behavior, or responding to their behavior knowing that they were triggered. And I agree, it's hard. And you have to learn yours before you can learn someone else's. But we all try to fix everybody else first, right? Which you don't understand.
No, I mean, you have your mission to help the police force. I have my mission to help bring more unity ideas to the world, and the teachings of truth, and thank God to create collaborations and bookings and events and tours. And, I have my larger mission to bring more unity to the world through music and teachings and truth. And everyone has their thing. I like to write books. There's a lot of goals I have, and these are all valuable and valid and very, very important, because I don't think there's anyone out there who is a big thinker or a big influencer or a big spiritual guide or whatever they're called nowadays that doesn't stop themselves and say, wait a minute, I just gave the most amazing TED talk, but look how I was today with my family. Like, it wasn't really at that level. I wasn't in my zone when I was at home. I was in my zone on the stage, which is quite a human reality. So the key is, what we need to do is, once again, to remind ourselves that every moment is fresh, and whatever was before, we can work on fixing those relationships and moving forward together, and to realize that we're not stuck in whatever way we script our life, that it's malleable. There's another teacher that I get a lot from, a guy called Charlie Harari, and he talks a lot the idea of plasticity. The idea that your mind, mental plasticity is your neuroplasticity. I don't know so much the science behind it, but I've definitely been hearing the concept a lot. And the idea is that we need to realize that it's much more versatile and flexible how we develop mindset and grow than we give ourselves credit for. Just like our body, we have to keep doing stretches and keep flexible and developed, like so too on the emotional level and so too on the mental level, and not allow ourselves to get sort of stuck into certain ways, like get all stiff. That would be a big cure to, everyone's looking for the cure for aging. I think that by living this concept of renewal, that in itself is a tremendous power, that our mind is constantly fresh for a new idea, for a new concept, for a new challenge. Our emotions, we're working on constantly keeping them in a healthy state, emotionally intelligent, and with certain levels of joy and focus. And so too physically, we have to keep ourselves in a healthy lifestyle. So these are the kinds of things that will prevent a lot of aging and aging in anything, aging physically, but aging in our work experience. We can't allow ourselves to get stuck in limitations. Like, the world's not going to let it. It just, if you look at reality in the last 20, 30, 40 years, like in my own life, or even before that, there's been so much technological development beyond that we can't be old. We can't afford it. It won't work to be an employee or to be someone entrepreneurial out in the world. I remember I used to turn up to meet Jeff with one of these old mobile phones, like the blocks, and Jeff would be sitting there. I don't know what it was at that time. It was a while back, but I don't know if it was an iPhone, but it was definitely a better phone than what I had. It had apps, and it had Facebook, and it had everything going on. And I was like, I'm working for a company doing social media, and he'd look at me and my phone, and I was like, no, yeah, but I just work in the office on the computer. That's enough for me already. And Jeff didn't say anything, but I knew, and now after the fact, even though it was praiseworthy that I was trying to hold on to a more like pure lifestyle of staying away from technology, but if I want to work on social media, I'm going to have to get with the phones and the apps. It's just not, you just can't keep up with where it's at now. Like, it doesn't mean you have to have every single app there is, but you do need to be able to function nowadays. And that's something that's really, really important, to learn the new tools of the trade. And that is just an example of how we have to refresh ourselves constantly in our relationships and how we work with technology. Everything needs to be fresh. I wanted to say something else. I don't know if it's going to be the right thing to bring up here. There's always so many things you can discuss. But let me ask you, Jonathan, rather than me go into something which I'm not sure about, would you have something to mention, like a question, or in terms of listening and really engaging with people, how to understand?
Yeah, I think it's the concept of, multitasking versus being present. I don't believe you can multitask. But that's kind of what society expects us to do, right? That's that short-term microwave concept as opposed to the long-term being present. And if you're doing something, if you're working and your children walk in, or your wife walks in, there's nothing wrong with turning to them and saying, let me finish this, and then I'll give you my undivided attention, right? So I really don't believe in multitasking. You can have a list, or you can have, priorities or things that you need to accomplish, but you need to be present with what you're trying to do. And I think, that would help out a lot of people. So when they transition from work to home life, right, they can be present with their wife, their child, or with themselves if they want to go for a walk or go work out, right? Focus on what is literally in front of you. That's helped me a lot. This hour is for this. So I have blocked out my time for this. Nothing else matters. And
that's the power of doing a course that I think that people don't understand nowadays, because they'll say, like, I'll just watch on YouTube or Facebook, I'll go, go wherever, everything's available, I can go listen to Tony Robbins, even though it's a past thing and he's not talking to me right now, but I'll go listen to him, or I'll go on a podcast, binge or whatever. And there's so much out there, thank God, and it's amazing content. But the point is that it's a whole different level face to face. And that's another thing that I would say I'm having an extreme challenge with. I don't know what it's been like for you this year and a half. It looks like it's continuing, at least on some level. But the fact that I don't get to be in person with people has been really hard. To be able to apply this listening tool, that it being pushed more onto the technological world, to even to be fully present. Like even in our Zulas, like I have a job and the Zula coincides with my job, and thank God my job is quite flexible, but I'm able to sort of maintain some of the activities I do during the Zula, but it's still on some level it's probably limiting my impact, my presence. You know, another story was I want to create tours, in-person tours. So we're about to go on one in the summer, and then the boss was like, no, we have things going on here that would be really hard for us to miss. And there was a lot of tension suddenly, because like we had people willing to pay and it was all meant to be taking place. We had this schedule, the itinerary, everything was looking amazing. And then suddenly I'm like, wait a minute, it looks like I might have to cancel this. If the main people themselves, and there was people phoning me and it was becoming a big mess. Now, at that moment, I had the opportunity to react, as we said before, to not respond, but to react and to start going, you know, getting all emotional and hyped up and trying to force my opinion of why we need to go now, you know, and because I was representing other people that also want us. Now I've learned to let go. So I didn't. I said, let's speak after the weekend, after the you know, disconnect to reconnect, the Sabbath, just a day of peace. And hopefully in the new week, we'll figure it out. So Sunday comes and the main person, I had the opportunity to be in person with them and speak with them directly. And they explained their reason. And that was it. And then everyone else who wanted the trip, sort of like dominoes, all like, was like, okay, we'll just reschedule it for October, no problem. Yeah, for the fall. So we're going to go in the fall.
Yeah.
But it was, I could have spent the whole weekend or leading up to it fighting with these people and pushing my opinion, and probably would have lost anyway.
Yeah.
And another thing, even if we would have tried to go, and even if I would have persuaded the main guy, and we get to the airport and they say, you don't have the right paperwork for this trip right now, you know, Corona, bureaucracy, whatever. And suddenly, like, you know, all the weeks leading up, all the pressure and the controlling and the forcing, and then it affects my relationships. And, you know, it's like a different life when you let go and you just go with the flow. And all the weeks and all the time and all that tension didn't need to happen. And then I come back to that concept that if I'm meant to have divine abundance, it will come in the right way, in the right time, and the right people. I don't need to force it. And
yeah, I agree with you. And when, you know, you mentioned triggers, and when I start getting angst inside, it's a trigger for me to like, okay, you need to respond, not react. And knowing that whatever that response is, there could be something bigger and better on the other side.
There always is.
You can see right in front of you.
Yeah.
And it usually is, right, exactly.
No, there is. There will be. It's almost 100%.
Right.
Like, because
but it's also being able to be aware of that and work through it, right? It's not going to go away. You have to understand how to process that, right? By, like you said, let's take a time out. Let's go. It's funny. I put myself in time out with my kids. I don't put my kids in time out.
Amazing.
And they think I'm just silly, but it gives me a time to disconnect, right? Because in the end, I'm the one that needs to be the adult. I'm the one that needs to respond and handle it in a more mature way. They're learning, right?
I mean, that is the concept of disconnect to reconnect, yeah?
Exactly. And I love that. I think, but that's so hard to do, right? Because most people, when they disconnect, it's sometimes it's hard to reconnect, right? Because they fear of judgment, like you said. They're looking at their left eye at everybody else, not at themselves. And so when you disconnect, it's a chance for you to look at you.
Exactly. Very good.
What I heard.
That goes together with the thing we said before. That's really good. So all these concepts support each other. That's the reality. And that's the key to build that kind of supportive network for ourselves. That was the next point I was going to get to. That because we're not having so many in-person experiences, we're going to have to build a lot of emotional, intellectual, and spiritual support for ourselves. Even physically, we're going to have to reevaluate, you know, what's necessary, you know, become a bit more minimalist on some level, because we can't have maybe the same lifestyle we used to have of like bigger holidays and whatever it was that we had, just because the world's shifting a little bit, and I think it's healthy anyway to minimalize some of our connection to materialism a little bit. But at the same point, like the concept of being able to have that self-knowledge and then be able to engage the other person fully and to understand, this is a very beautiful concept, but to realize the greatness of the other person as well and how much you can learn from the other person, to come to the situation not thinking you've got what to give, but what can I learn? Now, if they learn from you, that's great, but you're not trying to put on a show for people. You're coming there with an open heart that I want to learn something. Like I had a meeting about these trips with someone. In the end, I learned things from the meeting. Not everything was amazing that I learned, but I learned things. And about that person, about the place, maybe not all of it's 100% how I'd like to view things. I'm not going to absorb, not going to just be a sponge absorbing everyone else's ways of looking. I'm going to, everything that I experience in life, I try filter, unless it's something very pure, and it's a very pure experience. Then I want to then allow myself to trust that person or that moment that something pure is happening. But if it's not a pure thing, and there has to be some sifting going on, like with it online, for sure, you have to constantly sift how you use all your platforms, your email, all the different social networks. You have to sift all the time. There's so much garbage, and there's so much garbage trying to get your attention. You have to sift and put up filters, either literally or emotionally or intellectually, however you're going to do it. And then at the same time, even with people, like you can't absorb once again, this is something that will help the police force, that you don't want to absorb their trauma. You have to filter it. You have to filter what your part with them is. And it might be, once again, like we spoke last week, very deep, profound concept, but it might be just one small moment, one small point that you connected on. It's worth the whole encounter. Yeah?
Yeah.
To understand, like clever policemen know that, say I'm not a detective, but I imagine you're trying to figure out a case. You're going to go to a lot of places and meet a lot of people, and you're not looking for the solution. You're looking for little points of truth that lead you to the final clarity of the case. And that's the key.
Right?
Yeah, people are nowadays are trained to just give me the whole thing in 1 second and I'll be fine. But it doesn't really work. In reality, it's a process. And that life is a process. And so too with police work, it has to be a process. You can't get that person to do what you want. You're going to have to, through a process, teach them or demonstrate or give over the rules that are there to get them to understand it themselves. Like my son wants to go on a trip tomorrow, but he doesn't want to go. I want him to go. I've given him the money to be able to, in order to go. I've empowered him to be able to do it. He comes to me, should I go? I think you should, but in the end, he said, but I don't want to listen to you. Like I want it. He keeps saying to me, it has to, he's not saying these words, but he's saying it. It has to come from me. Like I want to make the decision, not you giving me the decision. Yeah, or telling me my decision. I have to come to it myself, and that's often with children. Now, in itself, is a deep secret for our generation, that they don't want to do what you tell them. You have to teach them in such a way that they think they're doing what they want, but it's actually you've somehow like subtly implanted the truth in them of what they need to do, or you've demonstrated.
Yeah.
But it has to,
because in the end, they're their own souls, right?
Yeah, and it has to come from their choice. Like I chose a more spiritual path. If my kids choose differently, I have to respect that. It's hard, because the world right now, I didn't grow up with internet, so now a kid can waste a lot more time, than I had when I was a kid. I would play with Lego. My mind was still developing, A kid now watching YouTube video after YouTube video, it's not, what's it going to develop so much, unless they're thinking themselves. So it's something which you have to teach them how to filter, how to sift. You have to teach them how to become their own agent of good and not your agent. And that's...
Well, and that brings back the comment you made about the trophy wife, right? And it's finding someone that's going to add value to you.
Yeah.
Right? To your experience, right? And you in return will do the same thing for them. Sure. And that's ultimately, I love that, right? Because it's adding value to the people around you. And how do we do that, right? We connect, like you said, on a soul level. And staying present allows you to experience life in the abundance and beauty that it is. And if you don't do that, you're going to miss a lot, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think about intimacy. Let's take intimacy. I have a course on it, Relationship Flow, it's called. I have a podcast called Relationship Flow, and I'm talking about intimacy right now. And one of the points in the intimacy series that I'm focusing on is you have to be fully supportive, emotionally, spiritually, financially. Like, there's so many levels of support that are needed to get to that moment of intimacy, to be fully present, to be fully there, to have the full vulnerability and trust created. And this is like an example of, like, in a soulmate level, the profundity of listening and really learning what the other person wants. So the problem is, if you're a man, you have needs, physical needs, and that voice can be much stronger than anything. And the world will empower that voice, but it doesn't serve the relationship at all, almost. Maybe it will help you perform physically, maybe, but in the end, if it's not the physical experience the other person wants, because you're emotionally not connected, spiritually you're not connected, your souls aren't connected at that moment, it's just about what you're needing. So then you're missing the whole, like, 99% of what's going on, and you're just getting 1% of that moment. And that's a very low level experience of life. This is what people in the world need to realize, that they're like, they talk about how the brain, they only know like a small percent of what's going on in the brain, or there's so many levels of humanity that people are aware of very minute amount. Now, understand that we have the power from the soul to know ourselves completely, and to fully use the full potential of our being on all levels. On all levels, on our physical level, on our emotional level, on our mental level. We've totally underestimated our abilities. And that's going to be the same with our relationships. We've underestimated how much, by engaging in our relationships, we'll get so much more with our other partner.
So how does one trust their soul?
I think that's a good question. I think trusting the soul is learning a lot of principles of truth. Will help understand that it's on par with what the soul's communicating, and to understand that it will only bring, the soul level will only bring truth and positivity to you if you really understand it on an objective level. It takes certain level of objectivity. So this is the problem, that we are subjective, and that's why I said before, a few points back, that you have to speak to other people who are more objective to you. That takes, you're not getting anything for this. It's a very objective moment where you can just evaluate yourself. There's no one else's, no one's going to hear about it. It's no one else's business. Between you and yourself, and if you believe in God, your soul level, there's certain moments of time of objectivity, and that gives you tools to constantly assess: am I living up to my soul level? Am I understanding the soul correctly? Am I communicating correctly? Now, being that we're coming near the end, and I wanted to just jump on the 6th point, and it flows perfectly from the last 5 points that we've been going through in this course, United Souls course. The 6th point is, how do we join with others in our life in a healthy way? So as you can hear, it's like a sort of perfect continuation. The way Stephen Covey calls it is synergization. I don't know if he made that word up, but it's a good word. The idea of synergizing, 1 + 1 = 5, = 10, = 1,000, because it's multiples. Once you join with another person, you are 10x in your effectiveness. Try run a house by yourself. Try run a house with a soulmate. Try run a business by yourself. Try run it with a team. Try run a police force by yourself. No such thing. It doesn't happen. it's synergization. You need the group experience. You need to be completely joined up with other people, but you can't do that until you've first done point 4 and 5 of win-win and learning to really listen to the others. And this is where a lot of businesses are struggling. Personally, I work for a place with that struggle, where some of the management don't understand the concept of win-win and listening, and therefore the synergization is limited in a real way, and people unfortunately leave the organization, etc., etc. What I choose to do is to tune in to the parts that I can be helpful, I can synergize. And what level of the relationship with the boss and the company can I synergize and collaborate? Now, if someone came along and offered me a work experience where there's full synergization, I would probably jump for it. Yeah, because that's for me, my ideal. But I'm also a realist, where I accept that not all the time are you going to be blessed with that ideal work experience of synergization, and therefore you have to choose how and when to synergize, where to be a win-win, where to really listen, and where to just block the noise off. And that's being real with reality of life, that you can't always synergize with the people you're with. But either way, you need to discuss being healthy with others in everyday life. And awareness of soul brings this synergization into reality, because if we're all one soul ultimately, then we can ultimately all synergize. So if you're able to overcome whatever block is in front of you with that person or that company or that experience, and go to that source level. Now that's a deep idea, but the source level, as we said before, the Baal Shem Tov, the idea of unification with every single person in your life, with every single thing even. That's how far he went. Everything. To unify with everything is a very deep level, high level, but it's going to the root level and bringing it down into everyday life. And that's living with a very exalted way of viewpoint, a very high level way of viewing the world, and bringing it down into the most simple things, the most everyday actions. And that's really, in the ultimate sense, the purpose of creation, which, as far as I understand, I mean, there's many ways of explaining the purpose of creation, the purpose of humanity, but from this class, this course, the focus would be a unification from the highest all the way to the lowest in every aspect of your life. The soul level should expand outwards. It shouldn't be something like, I remember when I was reading even books that, like a bit more, it's like self-help books, the idea of an aura, a light around a person. We all understand that on some level that exists. Now, the way it's explained in the deep mystical text is that's your next level of potential. So really in life, you're not just growing physically bigger and older, but you're growing into a new level of you, another level of light, an expanded version of yourself that's more aware and more in touch. And you're constantly growing into higher and higher, bigger levels till it encompasses your whole life experience. That's the kind of spiritual united souls that we should aim for, and we should try bring in little levels, little drips in our daily life now, because we have to have the ideal to know how to impact the daily. And what it does is, example, say you have the critical race theory, where if you have the united souls concepts as the goal, then the critical race theory becomes a very small blip in history. It's not something that should take over the corporate structure or politics or anything. And therefore humanity doesn't have to go through this whole painful, traumatic thing that's now being forced on people in America and the rest of the world. Humanity can now adjust and say, wait a minute, I know deep down I'm a soul, and I know that other person's a soul. So how can we work this out? How can we apply all these concepts of win-win and listening and truly listening? And how can I really get to know that other person and their culture? Rather than, God forbid, fighting over the diversity and having to do repentance over the diversity, have unity in the diversity, love the diversity, become one with the diversity, appreciate the diversity, unify the diversity, and see the beauty of diversity. There's a different world. There's a different discussion that should be going on out there. And You know,
Yeah.
but it starts off with us discussing it here on a small level, and it starts us developing this on a practical level for ourselves and for the small sphere of influence, and to believe that ultimately, if everything is one soul, even the people that are mistaken right now, and they're going on a path that seems to go against the soul level, and they're emphasizing way too much things that don't need to be emphasized so much. So they in themselves, at some point, if they're not meritorious, but their children, at some point it will get corrected. Because if you're an idealist and you believe in the soul level, which I am, then you know that the soul level ultimately will win, because the soul is eternal. And these politicians or whoever are not. So the soul lives on no matter what. And the success, how we evaluate success, is not going to be on a global level like they try to. They're always trying to fix the world on this massive, environmental global level. You fix the world on a personal level and on a realistic gauge of your sphere of influence. And as that grows, as you grow. But it's not now sphere of influence is everybody and everyone do what I say. That's the opposite. You're a mess, yeah? I don't want to say any names, but it's very obvious, just without getting political, but it's very obvious these people screaming and crying about financial, lack of, I don't even want to say the words, but the lack of this and the lack of that. They're screaming and crying, and they themselves are living it up and doing no charity or almost none, and they're like very happy to make money out of their brands, and it's completely hypocritical and corrupt. Their whole how they're going to save the world. Whereas a person who's sincere to these true principles of humanity that are universal by everyone, then they're going to realize that the first place to build is myself. I have to build the temple within, and then I can share that light outwards to those around me. And then once again, to really listen to another person will take that humility to see, one, the greatness of who I'm in front of, and two, to bring it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And even if I'm not sitting, if I'm walking or I'm on the phone, every interaction now we can try it. It's harder, but bring the soul level into technology. Since the fact, as I said, I'm feeling extreme right now that I can't be with people. I can't go on this tour that I wanted to. I couldn't see my parents 2 weeks ago. I can't just go to England. Still haven't seen my family there and friends. Can't just do this and do that. So I'm going to have to work it out, at least on some level, on the soul level, on the internet level. Try bring the soul level into the internet, at least on some way. We're doing this anyway. This course has happened. It's manifested thanks to you and PulveREDU, and please God, a growing listenership, and it will grow. We have to be optimistic that by doing it, it's already existing in reality, and people are hearing those vibrations. Anyway, the point, I just end off that the synergization will be our next challenge. How do we synergize? How do we join with others? And I think that's really important. Next week, we're going to discuss how to do it and really understand how empowering it is. We'll become interdependent, meaning we'll not just be independent, we'll be interdependent. We'll realize how much we need everyone around us in our life, but in a healthy way that's realistic with the reality. It will be hopefully very helpful. And we're also then going to do review and learn the idea of review, how to internalize, so that we can actually take these 6 points we just discussed and bring them into our daily life practically. We'll bring lots and lots of real life ways to do that. And I think that will help us in another 2 weeks from now to bring everything we've discussed into our daily life. And that's bringing united souls into a divisive world. Please God. That's it.
Awesome. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. That was great.
Thank you.
Amazing.